Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. Well, I mean, I can't see you, but I assume you're there for this very special event as part of the Other Film Festival, co-presented by the Wheeler Center, Future in Retrograde, Storytelling and Inclusion on Screen. Before we get into it, I'd like to acknowledge that we are streaming to you, broadcasting on the traditional lands of the Wurundjeri and Boonwurrung peoples for some of us, and also from the lands of the Turrbal and Yagara peoples for others. We'd like to pay our respects to their elders past, present, and emerging. And we'd also like to extend that respect to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander viewers who may be tuning in tonight. This continent that we're on has seen 65,000 years of storytelling, and it's both a privilege and a duty for us to be, in some way, some small way, continuing that tradition. But I do think it's also important that we reflect on the realities of colonial violence and dispossession, the ramifications of which continue to this day. So hello again, my name is Adolfo Aranjuez. I am an essayist, a critic, an editor, a dancer, a wearer of many hats, basically, is what I'm saying to you. I won't bore you to death because if I listed what I do for you, that'll be the whole panel, we'll be done. So I'll just direct you instead to my website, which I have, adolfoaranjuez.com. You can find out everything I do in one handy place. Very excited to be joined by two incredible humans here with me, one of whom is Meg O'Connell. She co-created, wrote, and produced Retrograde. She is an international Emmy award-winning and nominated producer, the company director at Unless Pictures, and part of Screen Australia's Talent USA delegation for 2020. Also here with us is Anna Barnes, the lead writer and co-producer of Retrograde. She is also an award-winning playwright and author, including the 2012 book Girl, The Ultimate Guide to Being You, and the writer of the ABC Vertical series Content. Please, well, I was going to say please join me in making them welcome, but we can't hear each other's applause. What is happening? And also want to say hi to our two Auslan interpreters, Amber and Michelle. Thank you for joining us today. So I'm just going to give you a little overview because I like to do this at all of my events. Moderators don't do this, but I feel like it helps, signpost for people where we're going. So I guess we'll start with a discussion of representation on screen and off. Then we'll talk about some production stuff, some interesting gossip from these two. And then we'll discuss kind of bigger picture things about technology, equity, and the future. But before that, we have a cute little clip of Retrograde, this incredible series with ABC. Instead of describing it for you, I will let you watch it. Enjoy.
I'm going to be fine.
That's right.
I'm going to work this out. It's going to be fine.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Maddie!
You got this.
Maddie, can you hear me?
Dad?
Madhuri!
Dad, where are you?
Your mother and I are on our coastal jaunt. Look, first stop, Bateman's Bay. It's lovely, huh? Very beautiful. Very nice.
Well, Dad, have you been watching the news recently?
When are you flying out? Is it today, tomorrow? Your mother can't remember anything.
It was
Okay,
tomorrow.
Good. What is it, Madhuri? Articulate? Bolo, kya ho raha hai? Tell me.
The job is not going ahead.
Oh, no. I told you, no? I told you she would marry this up.
I didn't marry this up. It's a global pandemic.
Yes, it's always something, always something. What was it when you dropped economics?
I don't know. An aha moment?
Aha moment. And then when you went up to bloody Brisbane Bay.
Coming of age?
What was that?
Dad, this is really not my fault.
No, never your fault.
It's really not.
Oh, Ramsey, is that you?
Hi, VJ.
Oh, the extra weight really suits you, Ramsey. It's very nice. How is your mother's treatment coming?
Oh, yeah, she's fine, thank you.
Oh, very good. Very good.
Okay, Dad, I'm going to have to come and stay with you guys until this whole corona thing blows over.
Oh, Maddie, we love it when you come home. We love it.
Great.
But you can't. We've given the house out on Airbnb.
What?
6 months. Yes, nice Norwegian couple. Listen, both women.
Ooh, risque.
What are you even talking about?
Madhuri, do you ever read our texts? Your mother and I are on the road until August. We wanted to get out here and spread our wings and rub shoulders with the locals.
Oh, God.
Mind you, yesterday we had the worst oyster kill, Patrick.
Vijay, you're breaking up.
Even a local cafe has to have a minimum standard, isn't it? You see, give him a bliss. blistering yelp review.
Okay, I am going to get my cards because we need to do a reading.
First they came for the 2-ply and we did nothing.
But what are they going to do with it? You know, like eat it?
Okay, so everybody close your eyes, think positive thoughts, think of a beam of light. Will you guys shut the fuck up? I'm gonna be sleeping. So think of the beam of light coming out of your head. You're walking on the beam.
Oh, shit.
Morrison's announced a lockdown. Am I still walking on the beam of light?
How great is that? Such a good show. I enjoyed it. I said I would watch like a little bit of it, like one night, and then I ended up binging the whole thing. So hurrah to you both for creating such a good show. But to get into it, my first question actually is, now that the show's out in the world, it's been very warmly received, including by me. What's been your favorite thing about this entire experience? So that can be a takeaway, a lesson, a piece of audience feedback. Yeah.
We were able to work with the actors a lot because it was just such a quick process. The writing and the production, it all happened so quickly. We were able to get feedback, and we were able to hear the scripts and hear the actors read the scripts from really early on. So like draft 1, draft 2, which is really kind of unheard of in TV. And it was so awesome because we were able to get, feedback from the actors so much in the process. So for me, that was really such an amazing thing about working on Retrograde, just being able to work and collaborate with the actors so much.
Yeah, it's as Anna mentioned, we made it very quickly. So from pitch to broadcast, I think it was about 4.5 months. So to kind of see people embrace a challenge like that and, basically, put absolutely everything into the production was really kind of incredible to see, just that people are able to sort of meet difficult circumstances and be resilient and be agile and curious. But honestly, like the other thing that's been so great for me as a co-creator on the show, but also as one of the writers, and has just been the response to the character of Sophie. Like it has really kind of blown us away. Like just the feedback that we've got and the support that we've got from communities that I guess hadn't seen a character like Sophie on screen before was just so heartwarming and exciting. And to be able to work with Anna in creating and bringing that character to life, but also Esther Hannaford, especially during like a year that has been so isolating and kind of hard for so many people. She's like most of my friends' favorite characters.
Absolutely. I mean, it's definitely such an incredible, thing that you've created. And I do want to talk about the challenge stuff a bit later. But now that you've mentioned Sophie, let's launch into it. Like I feel like is kind of the crux of a large part of what we're talking about tonight. So Sophie's character lives with chronic illness. And Sophie's character, as you mentioned, is played by an actor, Esther Hannaford, living with chronic illness. And Anna, you live with chronic illness. So there's this kind of three-way bleeding of reality and representation, which is so powerful and so important. But was that something important for you from the get-go in the creation of this show?
I think it was important for us as like from the very early days to make sure that the characters were as diverse as, our friendship groups as people in Melbourne and living in Melbourne and Brisbane, and just to be reflective of like Australia generally. And but the sort of creation of Sophie in particular, that happened really early on. I think we wanted a counterpoint. Like we wanted someone who wasn't experiencing this for the first time. The idea of lockdown, who for them, the idea of lockdown wasn't necessarily new or alienating. Mainly because that's really interesting thematically, but obviously also it's something that felt really close to Anna's experience. And we knew just because we had to kind of write and create this thing so quickly that we had to draw on our own experiences where possible. But yeah, that was always kind of like that was really kind of part of the early DNA of the show, Sophie, and then it sort of grew as we worked with Esther and as we kind of developed the character together. But it was absolutely always a challenge and a priority for us to kind of, to see someone like her on screen. Anna, is that sort of,
Yeah, no, I mean, absolutely. I think you're right. From memory, Sophie was, her illness was front up from the very beginning of kind of creating all the stories. So it was definitely something that was part of the early conversations that we were having about just, what different ways people were experiencing the very early times. Like these were the very early times of the pandemic. We're talking in March, and so that was obviously my experience as someone with a chronic illness was something that I was talking about a lot, and it just as Meg said, it felt like it was an important story to follow, both dramatically but also it's as something part of something bigger than what we're doing.
Absolutely. Something I found especially worthwhile and enjoyable about the show was that, yes, Sophie's character does live with chronic illness, and you do kind of see evidence of it in the show, but it's never really, the audience is never really beaten over the head with the illness. In particular, I've been so sick of the trope of disability or mental illness being a kind of tragic plot point, which just isn't the case here at all. How did you strike that balance?
Yeah, that's it's a really interesting question, because it was something that I think we talked about a lot in the writers' room of how much, because as you say, it wasn't talked about a lot because for Sophie, it wasn't new. So this wasn't a new diagnosis. So she wasn't going to be sitting around with her best friends, explaining her illness every episode. It just didn't make sense. But also, we did talk about how do we, make it so people understand what's going on for her. So it's not completely alienating, but it was important that it felt authentic and realistic. And these are her friends. So she's really not there going to be kind of like marking people through, every element of her medical history. It's just something that, we live with. And so it just became so much part of her life. And I really am glad that that's something that I think people have really responded to. And it's something that was important to us in the writers' room, that we were doing that. So I'm really glad that you say that because that was definitely the goal. The tragic storyline is, I agree, such a trope that we're all getting tired of. And it's when people are writing, when someone's illness or disability is their entire character. I mean, that's something that we see often, where that's all they have, that's all that we know of them, because that's how their role in their story. Whereas for Sophie, she was living with her illness. It wasn't something she was hiding. She wasn't ashamed of it, but it really was just, she was getting on with it. These are her friends. This is her life. So yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think, as Anna said, like, it was also kind of important that the way that the friends related to her seemed realistic. Like, they're often selfish, or they're not properly listening, or they don't quite hear that she's going through a different experience to them in some ways. And I mean, all of the characters have different arcs and kind of have ups and downs at different points in the series. But it's really interesting that, we kind of, you see it in Sophie's arc over the course of the series, but that the other characters, sort of feel like they're going through something for the first time, and it just doesn't seem to dawn on them. It takes them so long to realize that their friend who's sitting across from them, who they've known for years, has really similar things. And we kind of it's really hard to, as someone who doesn't live with a chronic illness, like, to remind yourself that, like, you can be selfish or ignorant or not quite what someone else is going through. I think, like, you want your characters to be the best versions of you often, but like, we have to kind of remind ourselves, that we're often not great for listeners, or we often, we're not the best friends that, or we're not the people that we hope to be. And so we tried to make sure that we didn't let the characters kind of that they were realistic, that the friendships were realistic, and that they let her down in ways that people are let down. Yeah.
I'm going to skip ahead to one of the questions I'd originally listed for later and bring it up early. This is a bit of a spoiler, so if you haven't seen the show, which is your own fault because you really should have by this point, Sophie actually does blow up at her friends towards the end of the arc when they're about to be liberated from lockdown. And they're all kind of planning what's happening next, etc. And she's just like, but I really actually liked this period because I didn't have to worry about the pain and the difficulties of going out. Like I could just hang out with you every night because it was in a virtual bar, Was that something conscious that, you built the story around, this idea that Sophie is actually kind of the calm one? She's the rational one, and the others, I wouldn't call them caricatures, but there's a wildness to them that Sophie kind of doesn't have. She's quite a grounding presence.
Yeah. I think, it was interesting because we were, as Meg said, with a lot of this, we were going through it as we were writing it as we were going through it. And that was something that did come up for me, and I saw it reflected on like sick internet broadly. So like in community spaces online where a lot of people with illness and disability was the discussion about things becoming more accessible for us. So seeing friends more, being able to do trivia online, or, this aspect to lockdown. And I remember talking about that with Meg and the writers, and talking about how when the first lockdown stopped, there was an element of a lot of people were really scared, like myself included. It was a really scary time as well because it was, worried about, the health, the basic, are we going to be able to control this? Where is this going? But also feeling that loss of connection that had been brought about by this pivot to online with social stuff. And so that was something that, I think I remember talking about that with Meg and in the writer's room about that, while everyone was like, yay, we're getting out of lockdown, there was, some anger and some fear and some upsetness in some online sickness space I was in, and also with, for me as well, of feeling like, wow, okay, now we're going to go back to this world that, can be really inaccessible. So it was definitely something that we'd kind of, we talked about because it was something that I was seeing in my own life, but also with other people online generally.
Yeah, I think it was important for us that Sophie had like a kind of moment of, of reckoning, or of at least, being able to kind of say her piece. Like, it's not that she's biting her tongue. She's often like very, openly critical of her friends and their obsession with productivity during this period, and, funny kind of cynical way. And I think for us, and also for Esther and for Natalie Bailey, the director, like for everyone involved creatively, that Sophie had this moment where we could kind of go, like she could just tell them off really and just, drop that kind of truth bomb, because it is the truth for her. And it was like, must have been just an incredibly strange time to have people sort of like celebrating. Now we can kind of go back out into the world. Obviously it didn't go quite like that in Melbourne, and it's been a very different experience than we kind of could have predicted then for people. But we really wanted that moment where they also realized that the online community that they created for each other is important to them, and that it wasn't all about, meeting up in person, because they also live in different cities. Like, the reality is this was a space that they came together in, and that made that helped them reconnect. It like so much of it was about friendship, and so much of the show is about friendship, and friendship kind of reforming in this online community. And Sophie kind of is like really critical to that, and gets it more than the others.
I just want to slip in a quick question, mostly for my curiosity. This is kind of a little outside the brief, but it's why you moderate, because you can do what you want. Was there a reason you chose to create a story about a friend group of 30-somethings? I mean, the kind of the go-to age these days is to create a show of either teenagers or 20-somethings. But I was particularly, piqued by the fact that they're in my age group. Revealing my age, people shush. So yeah, they're 30-some. Why 30-somethings?
Yeah, I mean, Anna and I are both in our 30s, and we'd worked on content together last year, and that was about people in their 20s. And I think we've kind of really wanted to talk about our own experience. I mean, part of it was that we knew that to tell this really quickly, we needed to be drawing on our actual lives and our age group and the things that the questions we're asking ourselves. But it was also that we were just more interested in exploring that and asking those questions of ourselves. I mean, like, we were making this during the pandemic, which was raising a lot of existential questions for all of us, from our homes and like locked inside with our partners or families or housemates or whatever. And I think it just made so much sense for us to just kind of dig in and find out the kinds of questions we were asking ourselves. I mean, it's also like the idea of retrograde kind of came from an online bar that one of the producers, Dan Lake, and I started together at the beginning of lockdown. So before there was kind of like the federal lockdown, when there was kind of when everyone started social distancing or isolating. We kind of just came up with essentially it's just a website that you can drop into, but it is, you don't have to log in. It's not like Zoom that you have to get a meeting in. It's just always open and always kind of available. So this bar became a place that 30-somethings, our friends, hung out in. And the first night we started it, there were like 30 people or something came over the course of the evening, and we did karaoke and we had trivia, and it really was like a kind of space where we could all hang out. And we had friends from Sydney and Melbourne and Brisbane and living in the country drop in. And these are people that I hadn't seen in years or connected with in years. And they were meeting each other, and it was like Cheers, but digital. So it really was kind of came from that real IRL online experience.
I'm going to move on to the second phase, talking about origins, production, that kind of stuff, technical stuff. Where did the idea come from? I mean, I know that you said you had a script and you had to kind of pivot quickly, but I mean, could you talk us through, from start to finish, where did you even come up with the idea of using the Zoom format? I mean, I know it seems so obvious now to create a show that mimics, this format that we're all using every day, but, before you got to that point, how did this whole thing come about?
It kind of came from having started this online bar, the bunch of 30-somethings dropping in, hanging out. And then my co-creator, Marco Toole, who's a writer, and he dropped in. I think we went live on Instagram. Dan and I were drop into the bar. And he came by and we were just chatting and hanging out. And the next morning there was an email from him in my inbox that was this is a show. And we kind of realized immediately, of course it is. And, having made content with Anna last year, which all kind of took place from the perspective of a mobile phone. And this was we just kind of knew immediately, the pieces just fit together that, well, we could make something from the perspective of a desktop and an online bar. So that the germ of the idea kind of came from that. And then we started talking to ABC, to Kim In Liu and Sally Riley at ABC almost immediately. And I guess because it was the beginning of lockdown and the sort of the implications of the pandemic were kind of hitting home, they were just so supportive. They just kind of couldn't believe that we were able to sort of make this thing, come up with this idea, but then make this, turn around this production so fast. And they really wanted to be responsive to the times and to kind of catalog or archive this period that I guess is completely, none of us have gone through anything like it before. So, Anna came on really early, and the two of us and Mark kind of just started to work out what is this story world? Why would people tune in for this particular and spend time with these particular characters? And I guess that's always the most important thing. Obviously the kind of gimmick of a Zoom show or a show like there are many of those now, although I think it was one of the first. But you kind of stay for the characters, you stay for their experiences and their storyline. So it was really important to us that they were fully fleshed out. And I mean, there's sort of like, that's kind of, would you agree, Anna? That's how we did it. So that's the origin. I guess going off that, so once we pitched it, I think we pitched it to ABC on like April 5th. And then the first episode aired on July 8th. And then all 6 episodes were out by August 8th. So 6 half hours. That's kind of a very difficult turnaround for TV. Usually you don't even contract in 3 or 4 months. So to be able to script in that period and then also actually produce the series, go through pre-production, shoot it, and also post it. So it was kind of on a rolling schedule where basically all of those things were happening at once. So we were writing while we were rehearsing, while we were on set filming and editing and putting them out. So it was a challenging schedule, but it's a real testament to the team. Like everybody just kind of gave their all. And Anna was involved in all of those things, and everybody it was a real like, all right, if we're going to do this, we all have to kind of help each other out. An incredibly collaborative process. And I guess just very rigorous as well. We spent many, many hours in the writers' rooms talking through the characters and building that world with Michelle Lee and Declan Fay and the story producer, Sophie Miller, and the director, Natalie, was in the room for a lot of it as well. And then as soon as we cast the show, we basically started having long conversations with the actors about their characters and backgrounds, and sort of continued to build out the characters with them. So like Anna said at the beginning, that was like one of your favorite things, Anna. That I feel like that was incredibly special and unique to this project.
Was the writer's room particularly enjoyable for you, Anna? Like, what was it like being contributing that very specific kind of perspective? Like Sophie is an integral part, as I said, of the show, but, she's not the only part of the show. What was that like for you?
Yeah, I've never actually written about, I've never written a character with chronic illness before. So it was really interesting. I think it was really, it was really good to I think in some ways it was really helpful while we're going through this kind of really particularly strange time. It's a really strange time to be chronically ill during a worldwide, pandemic. And so in some ways, I think it was really interesting. It was also really interesting to kind of talk about chronic illness with other writers as well, and talk about different ways to approach it. The whole thing was really interesting for me because I've never really written about it before. So, it was really, I think I was able to kind of like talk about things that were going on that, like we were talking about earlier in relation to the accessibility, and being able to kind of get that out there. It was really special and a really unusual kind of unique opportunity. So, it was really cool.
Did you experience any setbacks while making this show? We're experiencing setbacks right now. You can't tell because this has been edited very seamlessly. But the actors were all shooting in separate locations. You would have, what did you have? I guess number one, what was the tech situation? Like, was there like a streaming situation that someone was recording in real time? Number one. And then number two, did you experience any setbacks technically?
So what we would do is we'd send out like a laptop rig that would have a microphone and camera attached, an iPhone camera attached, and we'd record using the iPhone, and then the laptop was kind of like a reference for the call. And we actually did use Zoom. So the actors would all be chatting to each other on Zoom, but we were kind of separately recording the feed. And then some of them were filming in their own homes. We filmed in the director's home and in the DP, Sky Davies' home. So, that's pretty unique. There was also, one of the producers' homes, which was really yeah, just kind of funny. So all of them, so they're in their separate locations and they have like a tech operator with them, but just one person who's kind of just doing all these odd different jobs that, you know, usually like 5 or 10 people would do, which is crazy. But they become, you know, like they became really good friends with each of the actors, and so they're kind of like the point person at each location, and then they're talking to the technical director who's like kind of at HQ, I guess. And I mean, it's a virtual set. Like the director is using Zoom to kind of talk to the actors, and we could watch the feed. Anna would be on set and I'd be on set, and we'd be like watching the actors perform, and then, you know, the production designers looking on, and all of the different crew members are able to check in and see how it's all running, which is incredibly challenging, but also, you know, very rewarding. We experienced so many setbacks. Like, I don't know, it's like a long shopping list, but, you know, internet failing. There was one day where the internet went down in Melbourne, and it just meant we just had to stop shooting for 2 hours or something. That was probably like the most unlucky we got. Like, to be honest, I thought it would be like much worse than it was. We've genuinely had like more tech problems. I've had more tech problems just like on normal Zoom calls than when we were doing this. So yeah, again, that was kind of just due to the people involved just kind of thinking ahead and going, okay, we're going to need backup modems and all of that stuff. We also, I mean, like we were in Melbourne was in stage 3 lockdown as we were sort of wrapping the last week of shooting, but it looked like was going to go into stage 4. So that would have been that might have meant we had to stop shooting. So we were kind of preparing for that, which was a little bit scary towards the end of the shoot. But I think in the end, we managed to film everything before Melbourne went into stage 4. But our director, Natalie, had to go to Sydney to leave Melbourne in order so that she would be able to like go to New South Wales to work on another gig like in the last week. So she was then directing from Sydney, and we had other performers who were like guest performers who were in Sydney. So, you know, we're shooting and post-producing in 3 different states, always using like, you know, either Zoom, no phone calls. I wish we called, like there were some phone calls, but so much Zoom, so much FaceTime. I mean, it was kind of an endless, you get used to spot fires, I think, in production. But every single problem was a new problem for someone on set. And so usually you're like, okay, cool, we'll just do what we always do when this comes up. But it was kind of like, okay, you have to reinvent the wheel every time something goes wrong. You have to come up with a new solution. In terms of setbacks in the writing, Anna, what do you think? I mean, we had to be kind of very responsive to locations and to like day and night. And
Yeah, I think it was more, it was kind of almost because the process was so quick, we were kind of just learning on our feet, learning what would work. And we were still writing when it was on air. So we had that, that's how quick it was. So we were kind of also learning what was working as well. We were learning like how people, you know, appear and how we could make it look differently. Like it was really, as we were going, we were just learning a lot about the writing and what was strong, like what made something so strong. Or it was a really interesting kind of process because, as you said, it was kind of like just learning on the feed. And that was why I think that the team everyone was so up for it. Everyone was so like, it just felt like you were in this like big kind of, just everyone was willing to work with what was going on. So it made it like felt like far more collaborative than I would say it usually feels as a writer. So it was on that end, it was really awesome.
And just so much access to one another, you know, like we'd have these long, like we call them punch-up sessions, but like going through the script and like basically line by line, all of us together in a writer's room, like making sure that it's working and making sure that we, you know, that like all the jokes are landing and doing a pass of each of the individual characters. But then we'd bring the actors in and do that again for rehearsal. And we might be changing like dialogue the day before we shoot it. A lot of the episodes were shot in one day, and so we'd rehearse maybe the day before or a few days before, then be kind of responding to feedback from the rehearsal, changing lines, not storylines often, but like sometimes like doing pretty major, surgery to the script. And then we would be shooting that episode a couple of days later. So very iterative.
Exactly.
That sounds like an incredibly involved and, yes, demanding, but also quite rewarding production experience, right? Like, I feel like I would have loved to work on something like this. But I mean, now that you've done it, you've done next chat, season 2. This is a new working relationship. You've signed a contract now. But yeah, you've and so you've done it now, and you've created this incredible production in what everyone has called unprecedented times. And I say this as the sun sets, so apologies if for all this chiaroscuro and dramatic lighting. I can't control the sun. I've been trying to move to like improve the lighting, but it's not working. But yeah, so sorry. My actual question is, you've done it now, and you've succeeded. And, Anna, you were talking about all the learnings you did, and Meg, you've talked about like all the agility you've had to kind of cultivate throughout this process, but you've done it. So do you think this series working the way it has bodes well for the future of other kind of series where people can respond to difficulties and circumstances, or, like people's specific circumstances? If Sophie's experience is anything to go by, some people can't always go out, can't just work all the time, and kind of require circumstances that are a bit more accommodating. Yeah, would you say that this is a kind of a beacon, maybe even like a source of inspiration for other productions?
Sorry, I was looking at Anna. I was like,
sorry, it's a big question. Sorry.
I think that's always a hard question to answer. I think like ideally, yes, I'd love to be like, yes, this is how, so much is possible. And I think we've all kind of proven and seen that this year, like people putting other people's health before the economy to a degree, and in locking down, and then being able to like adapt and just and have like whole office spaces go and work from home suddenly and shift basically like overnight, the way we do so much of what we thought was like standard has shifted. So I think that's really kind of positive and exciting, because it means people can't just defer to the status quo and say, well, that's how we do it, because we can then say, well, look how fast we changed and have this perfect example. Maybe our show is like one small part of that. And I mean, it certainly feels like a much more accessible way to make. And I feel like as a production methodology, like we'll utilize it, like Orange Entertainment Company and Unless Pictures, my company, like I think we will definitely use some of the lessons that we've learned going forward, so that you can have people who maybe can't come to set, or maybe like for whatever reason are able to use like this digital space as a way of collaborating and contributing. So I mean, like Anna and I were discussing this before, and I think it's always like a middle ground, I guess, like because a lot of people also found working remotely or working virtually quite difficult, quite challenging, and the communication bottleneck, or that feeling of maybe not being able to connect in the same way in person. So there's ups and downsides, I think. I feel like we'll definitely use some of the lessons we've learned, but whether or not it'll be like revolutionary and people will kind of only make in this way, I don't know.
Anna, for you especially, do you... I mean, I assume, I'm gathering from your tone and your general demeanor that you had a blast creating this show, working with Meg. You can tell me the truth later. No, just joking. What was it in particular about working on this production that you took particular enjoyment from? And as someone living with chronic illness, what kinds of things would you advise other production studios and other creatives to maybe keep in mind in ways that they could improve their working relationships with people like you?
Yeah, I think that, as Meg was saying, this year has really taught us a lot about what is possible, and I think that a lot of people from the chronic illness and disability community have reflected on that. So maybe things that in the past they've been told isn't possible, like working from home or telehealth, or a number of kind of things that have been made possible. We now have the proof that this is possible, and that has provided accessibility for a lot of people. So yeah, I think that this has been a really important time, and a really important time for all of us to reflect on going back. What does that look like? And I would like to think that the learnings that everyone has made when we do move on in the future will allow for an understanding of different people's accessibility, which, has to be said, is really different for everyone. And so, what's accessible for me is not necessarily accessible for someone else. But yeah, I think that the main thing I would say to people with disabilities and chronic illness out there right now is, like, there is such a desire and thirst for our stories. It's growing and growing, and I do hear it, more and more in meetings. And so I just think keep writing, because there is an audience. Our show is an example of that. We got so much response from this disability and chronic illness community who were, tweeting about it, responding to it. The audience is there. And so I think, the broadcasters, everyone will start to realize that, and we're going to be really seeing more and more. So just keep writing, keep making noise. And I think that the stories are going to continue.
What a beautiful note to end on. I say this as the sun bathes me in its golden light. Well, thank you both. Thank you both again for rising up to the challenge and, putting together this. I really like the phrase you used, Meg, this archive of a time that we all lived through. And, it's incredible that this show exists now. We can show our grandkids that this was a thing, like this people hung out in virtual, but then again, maybe in a few years' time, virtual bars will just be the norm. Who knows? We'll see. But thank you also for this incredible, lively, beautiful discussion, for being so honest and lovely. And thank you both again so much for this lively, engaging, like really insightful conversation. And thank you for being so honest and so vulnerable and lovely as well. Again, I was joined by Meg O'Connell and Anna Barnes. Thank you to our Ausline interpreters, Amber and Michelle. And thank you to the Wheeler Center and the Other Film Festival for having this conversation. Again, I'm Adolfo Aranjuez. Have a good night.
Visit wheelercentre.com for the best in books, writing and ideas from Melbourne, Australia and the world.